You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
It is such a pleasure to have the opportunity to come and speak to Germantown High School today. For those of you that are not familiar with the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation, we are the state agency that administers the Hope Lottery Scholarship as well as the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. Essentially, we administer all of the state grants and scholarships for the entire state of Tennessee. So anyone in the state of Tennessee that completes a free application for federal student aid, we will receive that information, and for those students who qualify for certain scholarships and grants, those funds will be administered to the institution that they select by our administrating. So with that said, let's get started. Financial Aid 101, Paying for College. The number one program that you may hear a lot of people talk about now is the Tennessee Promise. The Tennessee Promise program allows students the opportunity to attend a community college or a Tennessee College of Applied Technology or a four-year institution that offers an associate's program, the opportunity to have the tuition and fees paid for if they're attending the community college or the Tennessee Technology Center. Now, for those students who are planning on attending a four-year institution, we will not pay all of the tuition and fees, but we will pay the fee amount that's comparable to the amount that we would at a community college. So first and foremost, students have to apply. So the website is up and going now. They had until August the 1st, and they have until November the 1st. And actually, it's November the 1st of 2016. So I do apologize for that discrepancy that's there. The student applies for Tennessee Promise. They will then need to complete the free application for federal student aid. That application process will begin as early as October the 1st, so it's this Saturday. Students will have the opportunity to complete the application up until January the 17th of 2017. So if your child or your young adult is applying for Tennessee Promise, they have between October the 1st until January the 17th to get that process done and complete. Tennessee Achieves is a partnering organization for Shelby County. Across the state, we have 3 partnering organizations, but for this area, Tennessee Achieves, they're going to be the individuals who will basically pair students up with mentors. These mentors will call, text, or email the student, and they will say, hey, don't forget to make your mandatory meeting, because if the student misses the mandatory meeting, they can no longer be a part of the program. A few years back, we had approximately 58,000 students across the state of Tennessee to apply for Tennessee Promise. We lost 20,000 students along the way because students did not make their meetings. So let me encourage you, if you have a young adult who is applying for this scholarship program, to make sure that they do not miss their meetings. Now, if they have to miss their meetings due to a school-sanctioned event, they will need to communicate with Tennessee Achieves or the partnering organization in their particular area so that they can possibly make arrangements for them to perhaps go to another meeting. Another thing that students will need to do is complete 8 hours of community service. Those 8 hours can be completed anywhere. As long as the students are not being paid for the community service hours, and as long as they are not completing those community service hours for a family member, then they can pretty much, so as I mentioned earlier, do those community service hours anywhere. So students have between November the 2nd and July the 1st to complete those hours. Students that are selected for verification, this is a process that pretty much so every college or university does. So by law, they have to pretty much so select at least 30% of their population to provide additional documentation. So if your young adult has applied for Tennessee Promise and they are selected for verification, and the school will let them know if they're selected, okay, then they have to make sure that they provide additional documentation. That documentation must be turned into the financial aid office no later than November the 1st. Now, I always tell families, try to shoot for July the 15th because that gives you a little cushion room in case you need to compile additional documents that the financial aid office will ask for. To give you a visual picture of what it's going to look like when it comes to the funding, the tuition and fees at a 2-year, 4-year public or 4-year private may be the number that you see here, okay? So on average, what happens is when you apply for the Tennessee Promise application and you apply for the FAFSA, your state grant, if you qualify for any, those funds will be placed towards the tuition and fees. Your Pell Grant, if you receive that, and if you qualify for a Hope Scholarship, all 3 funding sources will go towards the tuition and fees first. Whatever is left, the Tennessee Promise will pay the difference. So as you can see in this first case scenario, the tuition on average was $4,000 at the community college. And when the student received their Hope Scholarship, Pell Grant, State Grant, they received $3,000. The Promise paid the additional $1,000 to put you at what we call the eligible tuition amount. Now, at a 4-year public or 4-year private institution, it kind of changes. So the 4-year amount is going to be based upon the community college amount. So the community college amount is $4,000, even though the actual tuition is $9,000. The program will stop at the most $4,000. And so as you can see in this case scenario, the family has $3,500 worth of funding and the Promise pays the difference. Now, I know you're thinking to yourselves, what if I'm in a situation where I receive full Pell Grant, full State Grant, full Hope Scholarship? How does that work? Do we get a chance to pocket the extra Tennessee Promise money? Unfortunately, you do not. In a case like that, you will not receive the Tennessee Promise funds. But think about it in this way. You gained a mentor to help guide your young adult during the course of the process. Now, the Academic Common Market is a really good program that allows students who are planning on leaving the state of Tennessee to study something that no one in Tennessee offers, the opportunity to pay in-state tuition. There are 16 states that partner with the state of Tennessee for the Academic Common Market program. So I always tell families, if you want to learn more about the Academic Common Market, feel free to Google Academic Common Market in Tennessee, or you can go to the tn.gov website and in the search button, you would type in Academic Common Market. This CSS profile is an application process that some of our highly selective institutions will highly recommend that the student complete. Schools, for example, like Vanderbilt and Rhodes, they will say, please complete the CSS profile. Now, the CSS profile, unlike the FAFSA application, requires a fee. There is a minimum fee. Generally, I want to say that it runs somewhere around $30-something, okay? That application process will also ask about what type of vehicle does the family drive, what year is the vehicle, the make and model. They really want to know, do you truly need the assistance that you claim you need? Now, the fee discount programs are something that you definitely want to check out with perhaps your employer. For example, state of Tennessee employees in many cases can receive 25% off if their young adult decides to attend a state institution. So check with your employer to see if they offer any type of additional discounts that might be beneficial to you all. Many times families will say, now tell me about this Hope Scholarship. How exactly does it work? And is the Hope Scholarship the same as the lottery scholarship? Yes. The Hope Scholarship is basically funded through lottery funds. However, in order for a student to receive the Hope Scholarship, they will need to score a 21 on the ACT or have a 3.0 unweighted for Shelby County students, unweighted GPA. That's the GPA that we're looking at. The amount that you see here is how it's paid per semester. So if a student decides to attend a community college, they will receive a maximum amount of $3,000 for the year, paid out as you see per semester. The Hope Scholarship has nothing to do with parents' income. So it is strictly based upon the student's academic ability. If a student qualifies for the Hope Scholarship, they could possibly qualify for one of the 2 supplemental awards. The GAMS is our General Assembly Merit Scholarship. This particular scholarship is offered to students who have scored a 29 and a 3.75. So those individuals will receive an additional $1,000 added to the Hope Scholarship. Not bad. Now the other option is the Aspire Award. The Aspire Award actually is income-based. So this one is based on a family's adjusted gross income of $36,000 or less. If a family falls within that income range, that family will receive an additional $500 added to their Hope Scholarship. At a four-year institution, the funding amount changes. At a four-year institution, the first 2 years, the state will pay $3,500 for the year. The last 2 years, it's $4,500. So it actually increases the last 4 years. The GAMS, as you can see, stays the same. The Aspire Award actually increases to $1,500. Many families will always ask, what are the requirements to maintain the Hope Scholarship? Because I have a little social butterfly, and my social butterfly loves to talk to people and make friends. And, I just want to make sure that my social butterfly stays in school. Okay. And so with that said, every time a student attempts college credit hours, once they hit 24 credit hours attempted, the GPA will be checked at every college or university. So at 24, basically if they're a full-time student, their first year, so essentially your first and second year, 24 and 48 credit hours, you must have a 2.75 in order to keep the scholarship. At 72 credit hours thereafter, the game changes. It actually increases to a cumulative GPA of a 3.0. But for those students who do not have a 3.0, but perhaps they have been coasting at the 2.75 to 2.99 range, then those students are asked to have at least a semester grade point average of a 3.0 in order to maintain the scholarship. So what happens if I don't? You lose the scholarship. What if I lose the scholarship? How can I get that money back? Well, every time the student attempts 24 credit hours, the institution will check the GPA. So the student may ask the financial aid or scholarship office to check that GPA and find out if that student can get that scholarship back. But what if the student retakes a course? Let's say I scored a D in a course and now I've retaken the course and I now have an A. Can we do a grade replacement? The student may do a grade replacement. The Hope Scholarship will not leave the state of Tennessee. However, there are times where students will leave Tennessee because they just feel like something's better out there for them. And then they come back to Tennessee because they realize everything that they've been looking for has always been in the volunteer state. So if you have a young adult that wants to leave us but then come back to us, as long as they were continuously enrolled, meaning they did not sit out in the fall or the spring semester and they're out of state school, then they can come back to Tennessee and they can receive that Hope Scholarship with the understanding that they still fall within the required GPA requirement. Okay. So student was originally eligible for the Hope Scholarship. They left us. They decided they wanted to come back. We'll take them with open arms at least one time. I've seen cases where students will leave the state of Tennessee, but then they'll come back for the summer to take a summer course. That's also an option as well. The Hope Access Scholarship gives you hope that there is access to the Hope Scholarship. Y'all like how I did that? Okay. So with that particular one, this is geared towards the student who has at least an 18 on the ACT and a 2.75 grade point average, as well as the family's adjusted gross income is $36,000 or less. With this particular one, this is a one-time award of what you see here per semester. So the $875 per semester is at a community college. The $1,250 per semester is at a four-year institution. But once the student attempts those 24 credit hours, if they have a 2.75 GPA, they then are bumped up to the Hope Scholarship. So that gives students a possible second option. In Tennessee, we have the Tennessee Student Assistance Award. This is a state grant that is offered to students whose families EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But if that EFC number falls between 0 and 2,100, then that student qualifies for an additional $1,000 if they choose to attend a Tennessee College of Applied Technology. They'll receive an additional $1,300 at any of the community colleges in Tennessee, or an additional $2,000 at our four-year public institutions. So schools like University of Memphis, Middle Tennessee State University, Tennessee State University, UT every campus. Students will receive an additional $4,000 if they plan on attending some of the private institutions, Fisk, Lane, Rhodes, Vanderbilt, Christian Brothers, Freed-Hardeman, Union, those types of institutions. Now, I really want to encourage you all to apply for the Ned McWhorter Scholarship. This is a scholarship that will offer up to $6,000. Students who apply for this scholarship will need to have at least a 29 on the ACT as well as a 3.5 GPA. This application will actually open up as early as January. Now, on our tn.gov College Pays website, the student will be able to click on the student portal and apply for the scholarship in that manner. Everything that I've talked about previously, when a family completes the financial aid application, the free application for federal student aid, they basically applied. So this is one that requires a separate application. So essentially, Ned McWhorter, separate application, Tennessee Promise, separate application. For families who are looking for an option to do something technical, then students will be able to receive the Wilder-Nafee Technical Skills Grant if they choose to attend a Tennessee College of Applied Technology. Those students will receive up to $2,000 per academic year to help them fund their education at the Tennessee College of Applied Technology. Now, I also want to make parents aware of financial opportunities for them as well if they are looking to further their education. So the TCAT Reconnect program allows adults, whether you have a degree or you do not, to attend a Tennessee College of Applied Technology, as long as you're a Tennessee resident, and have all of your tuition and fees paid for as well. So when I come, I like to come with information for everybody, to share the knowledge. So let's talk about this actual application that you've got to complete. Okay, so here's what we're talking about. The application, as I mentioned earlier, will open up October the 1st. You will be completing the 2017-2018 application. 17-18 application will basically set the students' funding up for August 2017 all the way to the spring of 2018. The reason why I make sure that I say 2017-2018 application is because when you log on to the FAFSA.gov website, you will see two applications, but you want to make sure that you complete the correct one for the correct year. Another very important thing that I want to encourage you all to set your mindsets to do is to apply for a username and password. Both the student and the parent will need an FSA ID as well as a password. Families will use the 2015 tax information to complete this application. Now, mostly everyone this year has completed their 2015 tax information, so it makes it a whole lot easier on you this year. If a family did not complete their 2015 tax information, then they will just say that they did not file taxes. And then there will be an additional question that will populate that will ask how much money did the family earn. Now, in order to complete the FAFSA application, you will need a valid Social Security number. You will also need to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. So if you all would like to take a picture of that slide, feel free to do so, because this particular slide also breaks down what classifies as an eligible non-citizen. If a student is not a U.S. citizen, then of course they will not qualify for federal or state aid. So that would also include those individuals that may perhaps have a DACA number. I will encourage families with students with DACA numbers to please reach out to many of the private institutions. Christian Brothers, for example, they have funding set aside specifically to help students that may fall within that particular category. And then there are other private institutions that have funding as well. What if there is a situation where the student has a Social Security number, but perhaps the parents do not? How do we proceed? Well, if the parent does not have a Social Security number, then we ask that families put zeros in the Social Security number section. And as it relates to completing the FSA ID, the parents will not be able to complete that. However, they can select to print a signature page, and that will allow that parent's signature to be matched with that student's application. And so if there is a family that falls within that situation, I would encourage the family to be sure to do this process as soon as possible, because the student's application cannot be processed until that parent's signature page is received. So this is what the application looks like on the home page. So when you go to the home page, up top, do you see where that little lock is? You are going to click FSA ID. So when you click there, then there will be additional screens that will allow you the opportunity to begin to create your username and password. But one of the most important things that I can tell you is to write your information down. Oh, write it down, write it down, write it down. Let me tell you, because if you don't, you could very well be on hold for more than 45 minutes. And so the way the process is going to work is, not only will families have 2 security questions where they will select the question and create their own answer, they will also create 2 additional questions. So you're creating 2 questions, and then you're also writing your answer to those 2 questions. The 5th security question involves a date that's significant in your life, and it cannot be your date of birth. Now, this process the student will need to go through, as well as the parents. And let me just give you a helpful hint. The parent and student may not have the same email address. I know a lot of times parents will have that one universal email address that you all use for important business. But for this particular application process, you cannot use the same email address. And also, have access to your email address. If you put the email address on the application and you cannot access your actual email, you will not be able to retrieve the secure code that will be emailed to your account. So you need to be able to access that email as well. Here is a helpful number for you to call if you ever forget your username and password, or perhaps you misplace it, or perhaps you take a picture and God forbid, but your phone breaks. You will have this helpful number also written down. So let's talk about some of the things that you need to collect. The student's social security number. Your young adult needs to know it. Many times the students, they think they know their social security number, but they really don't. They just make it up. Please tell your young adult, do not make it up. Because when they make these things up, it takes forever to fix these things. So they need to have their social security number. They also need to make sure that they use their government issued name. Everybody knows your young adult is Bill at the high school, but on the social security card it says William. So on this application it needs to say William. Your young adult may go by a totally different last name at the high school than what's on the social security card. We want the name that's on the social security card. If your young adult's name is super long, you just put as much information in there as you possibly can, okay? Also, in addition to the information that you see listed here, these are some of the things that may be asked of you. But let me just make sure I point out, it is very important that you know that you do not count the equity in your home as your investment, because in some cases you may see a question that will ask you, do you own assets that exceed a certain amount? Well, some families will say, yes, our home exceeds that amount and it has X amount of equity invested in that particular property. Don't put that, okay? Also, another thing that I want to talk with you about, some of you may see certain questions because the way the system is set up, once you answer one particular question, another question may populate. If you see the question, as of today, what is the total amount in your checking or savings account? And let's say it's payday for you, so you've got quite a bit of money, but you have not paid your mortgage, you have not paid your car note. Then, is that really the amount that you should list? Because those major bills are earmarked specifically for those items. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to take out my golf playing money, my movie money, my shopping money. No, we're not talking about those things. We're being realistic in terms of those two major items. So when you actually get ready to hit login in the actual site itself for the actual application, you will see this screen. Notice on the left side where it says students, that is the section that the students will begin to put in their information. When it becomes time for the parent to put in their information, the side will change. You will click the correct year, and generally the correct year is already highlighted. The student will create a save key. This is a word or numbers that they will use to be able to log back into the actual application itself at a later date if they choose to do so. Most of the information will pre-populate, but if you notice where it says your middle initial, it will not. So if the young adult has a middle initial, please encourage them to put that middle initial there. This may seem like something that's very simplistic, but a lot of times families just automatically, for whatever reason, miss that part because the first and last name automatically pre-populates. Also, there is a section that will ask for the schools. This section will allow the students to list up to 10 colleges and universities that they want their information sent to. They will also have the option to put their housing plans as well as put the schools in the order that they want as first, second, third. Now, the reason why the order is important is because in some cases, funding can be offered based upon the order that the schools are listed. For example, in the state of Tennessee, we look at the first Tennessee school, and that's where we have your Hope Scholarship waiting for you. So if a student is just randomly listing schools, and let's say I just randomly list the University of Memphis, but I really want to end up at Southwest. Well, if the University of Memphis is listed first, your money's waiting at the University of Memphis, and you will need to do a change of institution form on your TSAC student portal to let us know, take my money from University of Memphis and place it at Southwest. Many families will ask, how can I keep from having to put my information on there? Or how does that work? Because my child will be 18. For federal purposes, the student has to be 24 as it relates to the age. However, there are 13 questions that determine dependency. So essentially, the questions in so many words, they range from, are you 24 years of age, in so many words, because if you were born before 1994, you'd be 24. Are you married? Do you have children that you will provide more than half of the financial support for? Are you working on a master's or doctoral degree? And this is very important just because many times when the application will ask students about their grade level, if your young adult has college credit from dual enrollment or advanced placement college credit, they will think, yes, I'm going to be a sophomore. So they'll say, yes, for this application, you are a first time, never attended college student. That's how you want to fill that out. When they ask what type of degree are you pursuing, the highest level of degree that you should pursue at this moment in time is going to be a first bachelor's degree at the highest. Even though later on they may decide, oh, I want to pursue 2 bachelor's degrees or a master's or a doctoral degree. All this questioning is tied up to funding. And so the reason why they're asking those questions is they're trying to see, are you an undergraduate student or are you considered as a graduate student? Meaning that on the graduate level, you don't qualify for certain things that you qualify for at the undergraduate level. Also, another question that I want to address is, are you in a legal guardianship? Does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? There are so many students that may live with a grandparent, a family friend, someone who is not the biological or adoptive parent. And that adult may be willing to provide their information. But if that family has legal documentation, we do not want that adult's information on that application. Matter of fact, we don't want anybody's information on there that is not a biological or adoptive parent, or if the step parent is married to the parent, the step parent gets to put their information in there as well. So what if there is a situation where the student has lived with someone that's not their parents, and that particular adult does not have legal guardianship? How does that process work? So the answer to that question would be, it is going to be at the discretion of the college or university to determine whether or not that student is considered as being an independent student. So in some cases, that particular institution may say we need a letter from a guidance counselor, a caseworker, someone who can tell us specifically what that what that family situation is, so that that school can make that determination as to whether or not, for financial aid purposes, this student is going to be considered as independent. What if you don't know what school the young adult wants to attend, but they're in that situation? Communicate with each institution to find out how they handle that particular process, because some schools may handle it differently than other schools. So now it brings us to this nice little infographic. Who is my parent? When I fill out the FAFSA, which one? My parents are fighting over who's going to provide their information. How does it work? So, are your parents married to each other? Yes. Then, if that's the case, we want both parents' information. Now, on the FAFSA, it's going to have parent 1 and parent 2. They did away with the wording mother, father. So, it's parent 1, parent 2. If you begin to fill out the information and you are parent 1, always remember, I'm parent 1 as I do this application process. But perhaps your parents are not married. Maybe they're separated. Maybe they're divorced. Maybe they have never been married. Then the question now becomes, are they living together? Because there are some people who are divorced, separated, or they've never been married and they're living together. So if they are living together, then you need both parents' information. But what if my parents are divorced, separated, or they have never been married and they are not living together? Then at that time, you are supposed to use the parent that the student has spent the last 12 months with. Well, what if I spend half of my time with my mom, half of my time with my dad? What do I do? Then you are supposed to use the parent that provides the most financial assistance. What if my parents, they split everything down the middle equally? Then you pick a parent, okay? Just pick a parent, just whichever, have them thumb wrestle, whatever, pick a parent. Okay, so then when we begin to get into the parent section, as you can see, it says parent and the color changes. And so at that time, it's going to ask about the parents' marital status. It's going to ask if the parents are divorced or separated. It's going to ask the month and the year that occurred. It is also going to ask for the Social Security number or information for the step parent as well, because if you say you're married, even though it's an understanding, you know, the government sees you all as one big happy family, they're like, you're going to come together and you're not going to be able to split apart. What if there is a situation where I'm married, but I file married, filing separately? On this application, they want you to be married with all your information on there. So even though you file separately, you'll have to do the math and do the breakdown and put the good information in the application. So that's kind of how that works. Now, this year, along with some of the previous years, you can pull your information from the IRS. So you just click a button. So essentially what will happen is it's going to ask, have you filed your taxes for 2015? Yay, you've already filed. And then you will put your filing status. And from there will be a series of additional questions. And once you answer those questions, then it's going to be that neat little box that says link to IRS. You'll click that button. And when you click that button, it's going to have you put in your username and password that you created. Once you put in the username and password and you tell it to proceed to the IRS site, you get this nice little box that's telling you you're leaving one site, you're going to a secure one. And then your tax information will populate. Now, your first, last name, those things are going to already be pre-filled. But you will actually fill in your address. Then you're going to hit submit. When you hit submit, your tax documents will actually populate. Now, if you are in a situation where you perhaps try to do this and for whatever reason it does not pull over, because some cases, perhaps if you're married, filing separately, it may not pop up. You will have to manually do this process. But you will check the little box that says transfer my tax information into the FAFSA. You will hit transfer now and voila, the information magically appears. And next to it, there is something that's written in bold that says transferred from the IRS. So what happens is if you're lucky enough to be selected for verification, then the financial aid office will want a copy of your tax information. They will not want the old school Xerox copy. They are going to want you to have transferred the information from IRS. Or if you don't feel comfortable with doing that, then you will provide them with an IRS tax transcript. And you can go to irs.gov or go down to the tax office, the IRS office, and actually get those documents that you need. The college or university will also require that you complete a form on their letterhead that will ask some of the same questions that the FAFSA application will ask. Essentially, the FAFSA application is looking at how many people live in your household, how many people in the household are going off to college, as well as how much money is being earned by the student and the parent. So those are essentially the main three things that they're taking into consideration. Now, there is a section for the student. Now, let's say the student did not work. Then the student will put that they did not work if they didn't work, and then there's still going to be a box that will ask how much money did they earn. If they did not work, they will put 0. If they work, then they will put whatever the funding amount is that they basically earned. And for students who filed, they can link just like I showed you earlier. So once all of that is complete, then you'll get to the signature page. At that point in time, it will ask, you'll see, are you a preparer? So essentially, there are some individuals that are tax preparers and they have a tax EIN number that they will place in that box. But for the average person, you will not be. So you will put no. Then it will pre-populate with the student's social security number as well as their last name, date of birth, and then the student will put agree. Once they put agree to the statement, essentially the statement is basically saying that the student is not in default of any student loans. So once you've read that, then you will select agree. But just so you know, it automatically populates to disagree. You have to change it to agree. Same thing for the parents. Because you would have already linked your tax information, you may not have to put in the username and password at this time. Now, for those individuals that do not file taxes, then they will need to just put the username and password. And then click sign, click submit, and voila, the confirmation page. That's the coveted page that lists all the information that you really want to know. You want to know, do I qualify for a grant? And if you qualify, it's going to be listed if it is a federal grant. It will also list the loan amount a student qualifies for. It will also list the colleges and universities that the student has listed. And then there's also some really good information about the graduation and transfer rates. It will list the EFC, the expected family contribution, the magical number that determines whether or not a family receives certain types of aid. Now, if your magical number is 0, the most you will receive in terms of federal Pell Grants are the free monies, is $5,815. If your magical number is 5,234, you will receive $598. What if your magical number is 5,235? You will not receive a Pell Grant. Pell Grants go to anywhere across the United States. Also, if a student qualifies for a Pell Grant, they automatically qualify for anywhere between $100 to $4,000. They qualify for the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. This is a grant that is paid based upon whatever the criteria is that the institution sets forth. So the institution may say, we don't have enough to give to everybody because every school gets a certain amount. And so they may say, we're only going to offer it to students who are coming to our state from a different state. So your young adults are from Tennessee. If they decide to go out of state, they may be selected to receive those funds. Some schools may say, we're going to give it on a first come, first served basis. It's up to the institution. Work Study gives students the option to work on the college campus. They are paid minimum wage. The money is generally paid directly to the student. Depending upon whether or not the student receives federal work study, and those jobs many times are a little bit more plentiful than the student work study, those are the jobs that the school has on campus, and they pay those funds, they pay the student based upon those additional university funds, okay? But when the student says that they're interested in work study, it lets the office know that, hey, this may be a funding source to help pay towards the students' tuition and fees. Loans have to be paid back. However, there are two main types. The subsidized loan is a loan where the government pays the interest. The unsubsidized loan is a loan where the interest accrues, but nobody is paying on it. When a person completes that FAFSA application, it instantly tells them the loan amount they qualify for. Whether or not a student receives a subsidized or unsubsidized loan is going to be based upon whether or not, the parent's income, whether or not they receive the Pell Grant or not, okay? If the student is considered as an independent student, it will be based upon the student's information. Now, lastly, the Parent Plus loan is a loan that is geared towards the parents. Whereas with the student loans, they do not require a credit check for the student. The student just will need to complete a master promissory note, okay? So with the parents, if the parents are approved, they can borrow up to the cost of attendance. If they are denied, then the student can borrow a little bit more. So generally it's a little bit over $4,000, okay? Also, parents are generally asked to go back into repayment In some cases, 60 days. In some cases, after the student graduates. It just really depends. Whereas the students go back into repayment 6 months after they graduate, or they're no longer enrolled in school. Okay. So this is my contact information. Therefore, if you have additional questions or concerns, you are welcome to reach out to me. I will be happy to answer those questions or concerns that you may have.